Alright, what's going on, everybody? How you all doing? Welcome back to the Fanatical Viewing Podcast. Took a little bit of a break from the podcast, been doing some other things, trying to get some other things just set up and going how I want them to. And just behind the scenes and stuff like that. Working on my other channel, stuff like that. But I am gonna be I'm thinking I'm gonna be making the podcast episodes a little bit shorter. And instead of, going for movies from front to end, kind of talking over aspects, stuff like that, I think I'm just going to give my general thoughts on a movie. The episodes will probably be much shorter. However, with me doing that, I do want to try and get more episodes of the podcast out there. And I do want to probably put more things into the podcast themselves instead of talking about one thing. Maybe put a couple things in there. This time around, though, I will be talking about one thing just because this is a current movie that is in theaters, and I do think it kind of just warrants its own kind of video just because it is a current movie that's in theaters, and it is kind of the new movie right now, and that is Wrath of Man. I'm a huge Guy Ritchie fan. I love just about everything he has done. Granted, I haven't seen the live action Aladdin or anything like that, but I do like, Snatch, Lock, Stock, Two Smoking Barrels. I love the Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock Holmes movies. I think The Man from U.N.C.L.E. is severely underrated. That is a fantastic movie. The King Arthur movie is pretty good. And The Gentleman was excellent. I saw that when it was in theaters in January of 2020, right before the world started going to shit. But I really love Guy Ritchie. I love the way he makes movies, not just as a director, but I love the way he writes as well. He really does something interesting, I think. He makes his movies just have so much swag, like so much swagger, like his movies are just fucking awesome, super fun, and this movie is no exception. Wrath of Man is an excellent, excellent movie. I'm not going to say it's like perfect or a work of art or anything like that, and it's definitely, uh, it doesn't do anything new, I would say, where The Gentleman felt like more unique, felt more new, even though that wasn't an entirely unique movie, but the subject matter and the stuff that happens in The Gentleman is something you don't see as frequently as, what you see in this movie. In this movie, it's basically a revenge story movie, but it does some things really interesting. It really spends some time. The action is there, as I have to I had to scratch my eye. But the action is there in this movie, and there is a good amount of it, and it is really good. But it is a different type of action, and this movie does more so concentrate on its structure. So, like, the movie starts out with, it shows Jason Statham going to this armored truck company and basically going through his applying and training process. And then, going on his first job and stuff like that. And then the movie, turns its heads and the middle section of the movie, like the second act, is basically what led up to that moment. So you basically see it in the trailer where basically Jason Statham is trying to get revenge on the people that killed his son during kind of like a robbery that went wrong. I don't want to give too much. I don't want to give too much more away on that. But basically, there will be some minor spoilers here. But basically, his son got killed in like a robbery that kind of just went wrong, and he was just kind of in the wrong place at the wrong time. And what's really interesting about this movie, and I guess I will kind of go into spoilers, so I'll kind of say that now. I'm not going to try and give away anything too really important to the story, but basically, what I really liked about this movie was it does kind of do all your basic revenge stuff, and it basically ends up turning into a, like, of course you would kind of expect, Jason Statham working on an armored truck company and people stealing money. There's going to be that greed aspect to the movie. So near the end of the movie, in the last act, you start seeing this group of people that are robbing these armored trucks. They're kind of slowly turning on each other, trying to get, to lower the split of the money, so they don't have to really share it. So you do see that type of stuff. And in terms of that, this movie does kind of fall into falls into some cliches. But where the movie really stands out to me is basically Jason Statham's character, because in the trailer they show you that he is just a dad trying to get revenge for the death of his son, who, like I said, was basically at the wrong place at the wrong time. But you actually see in the kind of the second act of the movie, where the movie shifts focus and goes to the events that lead up to Jason Statham kind of going under, it's not really undercover, but for lack of a better term, going undercover as a armored truck driver to find out who killed his son. We in the second act, we see the events that lead up to that, and I think there's some really cool freaking twists in there. You actually see that Jason Statham is actually like a crime boss. He's not just your everyday nice guy dad or anything like that. Like, I feel like that probably would have been the case if we were watching a like a Liam Neeson movie or something like that. Like, we would have found out he's just a regular guy who goes on a murderous spree or whatever, but to avenge somebody. But no, like, Jason Statham is actually he's like a crime boss who basically some events happen to where his entourage, his, I guess, lieutenants of his crime organization, are working on a job to rob some armored cars or whatever. They're working on a job, but one of them can't be there because he got in a wreck. So Jason Statham, it's supposed to be like his, quote unquote, day off. I mean, he's the leader of this thing, so he can do whatever the fuck he wants, but he basically planned to have this day off or whatever to be with this kid, and he basically told his lieutenants, which is just what I'm calling them. That's because it's just the people that he directly interacts with, so they're higher up the chain, presumably. But he basically says, you guys figure this out. I'm going to have a day with my son. But then the guy gets in, one of the guys that's supposed to be there on the job gets in an accident, and he can't be there. So Jason Statham basically has to do this. This part would be kind of hard to explain unless you actually see the movie, but he has to be, his son seemingly doesn't know what his dad does exactly. So, like, Jason Statham just happens with his kid to go, they're going somewhere, and they happen to drive by the area that they need to be at. So, because all Jason Statham has to do is basically provide some sort of surveillance for a quick second, just tell them which way the van is going. So they stop by real quick. The kid waits in the car. Jason Statham goes to a food truck that happens to be where, kind of close to where the armored truck is going to be driving by, and he just has to say which way it's going. But then the guys robbing the armored truck stop it on a road next to where Jason Statham parked the car. And this is where they don't know, like, who Jason Statham is. They don't know who the kid is, so they pull the kid out of the car because he's a witness, and all that stuff. You kind of see where that's going. And but seeing the events of, like, seeing Jason Statham as this crime boss, and then everything just turns on him, and then seeing him go on this fucking rampage, like, even working, like, there's this guy who I'm assuming is part of the authorities. I don't know if he's like high up in, like, the police or if he's like an FBI guy. It's never really made 100% clear, but he is kind of helping Jason Statham in a way, and is allowing Jason Statham to kill these people and kind of just look the other way. And I thought that was that's not a new aspect, but I think it played really well for this movie. And then on top of it, like, you see Jason Statham, the guy from the police or FBI, whatever, says they have a list of people, and Jason Statham basically just goes through the entire list. But then he finds out, that none of the guys on the list are the guys that he's looking for, and then that's when it's brought up that it was probably an inside job, and then the movie loops back on at the beginning of the third act. It kind of loops back into the beginning of the movie where we see him walk into the armored truck company building and start doing his interview and training process, and then it kind of like speeds that. It shows that part again, but it kind of speeds it up. And, oops, hit my mic cord. It kind of speeds it up and gives you a more summarized version. So the way the movie did that, starts off and then kind of goes backwards and then goes back to where the movie started, I thought was really cool. Really offered some really nice twists for Jason Statham's character. This was a really good movie. The movie does feel like it has almost 3 different parts because, like I said, you have the first act of the movie, which is basically Jason Statham getting this job and doing his first couple runs in the armored truck. And then, the second act of the movie and then the third act kind of introduce this group of military guys, which is the group of people that end up killing Jason Statham's son. And this is kind of another little twist in the movie where these guys aren't just criminals, they're veterans, ex-military, who, haven't really adjusted to life very well outside of the military and feel like their own country has kind of screwed them over, and kind of even talking about how, they're not built for everyday stuff. They're built to be soldiers. So not only just to get more money, but to kind of, see some action, they start, robbing armored trucks and stuff like that. And then those are the guys that end up blocking the road that the armored car is going down, that Jason Statham just happens to be like parked next to there, so the kid was right next to the whole scene, was a witness and everything, and ended up getting killed. And it was a really good, it was really played out very well. That part, I feel like the movie, for the most part, in terms of like the structure, was written very well. This movie was just super freaking interesting, basically from front to back. I enjoyed this movie so much freaking fun, and I feel like it was just written so well, and some really fun like characters too. I will say some of the dialogue is kind of like annoying, and mainly in the I would say mainly in the first act of the movie, kind of because they're giving Jason Statham some crap because he's the new guy at work or whatever, and they're all in this kind of it's kind of like a locker room where they just keep their personal effects in like high school style lockers, And then there's some kind of like locker room talk there. There's this female character who's kind of like a, oh, I don't know the right word to use anymore, but she's kind of like a manly speaking tomboy type lady with like short hair. Like the term people would have used, like 15 years ago or even 10 years ago would be like a dyke type character. She's kind of like that style character, and they give her very kind of like, I don't know, guy, locker room guy dialogue, and a lot of these other characters have that as well. The beginning, the dialogue in the first act of the movie can be a little rough. It seems like it tries a little too hard to fill in some of the air, where sometimes I feel like the movie could have just had the air. Sometimes it's okay for a movie to have dead air as long as, as long as something is getting accomplished, as long as the characters are doing something. But I would say that's really one of my only main problems with the movie, I think. Other than like the general story itself, the twists in it are good, and are written very well. But the overall story, Jason Statham being trying to get revenge for his son, and then like especially at the end, they have there is an inside man in the armored truck company that's feeding information to these group of veterans who are robbing the trucks, and shit, what was I gonna say? And then at the end of the movie, all the veterans, a couple of them start getting injured and dying just in the shootout with the armored truck people or whatever, because things don't go exactly as planned. But then they start killing each other, just because they're getting greedy for the money. And I wouldn't say it's they in general. It is mostly what's his name, Clint Eastwood's son, who's in the movie. I'm gonna look this up real quick. It's mainly him. He kind of plays the dickbag kind of character in that group of veterans. Kind of just a kind of a douchebag character, not really following orders, stuff like that. What is his name? It is Scott Eastwood, who really looks like his dad. He really does look like his dad. And fucking Post Malone's in this movie, but he dies like super quick. He's barely in it, which is nice. But man, this was a really good movie. It flows very well. I feel like for some people, I feel like it might feel like a little bit of a slow movie. It's about 2 hours long. And for some people, it might feel a little bit long just because the different acts of the movie kind of have a different feel in terms of pacing. The second act of the movie, where we kind of go back in time, is a little bit slower than the first act, and then the third act it's pretty fast paced too. A lot of that, there's always something going on in the third act of the movie. So the pacing of the movie isn't really inconsistent. It's purposeful. It's supposed to be that way just because the different acts of the movie are all different sort of things, and the movie even introduces them that way. Every time a new section of the movie comes in, it introduces it with like a white text on black background, sort of like a title, like a chapter introduction thing. So like when we get into the last act of the movie, it's called like, it shows the number 3 and it's titled like heart, liver, kidney, spleens, or something like that. And then at the end of the movie, we find out, before Jason Statham kills Scott Eastwood, who was the guy that ended up killing his son. He was the guy in the group of veterans that ended up killing the people in the robbery that went wrong. Before Jason Statham kills him, he makes him read his son's autopsy report, and that's the whatever, the kidney, liver, spleen, heart, whatever. All those were the spots that were hit by bullets when he was shot and killed. So that's kind of like how each chapter is in the movie. It is properly like introduced with like a title chapter screen sort of thing. And man, I love Jason Statham in this movie. He does again, it's like a lot of people will complain about actors like Jason Statham, I believe, or I feel like, because and a lot of other actors that are like him, a lot of actors that are not really, they're not necessarily acting, they're just kind of playing themselves. So like you have, Sam Jackson, uh, Ryan Reynolds. Even though Ryan Reynolds has done some like legitimately like drama roles or serious roles, and then you have um, Jason Statham, who's not so much acting; he's just kind of being himself. He's a pretty stoic character. He's you know, pretty serious, almost a man of few words at times, um, and just a plain badass. And I think that really worked in this movie. I also really liked, though, that even though he was kind of like a crime boss of some kind, he wasn't like a terrible like guy in general. Because when he's going through this list of all the people that are basically suspects in the murder of his son, he oh shit. Like there's one point where he busts in on these people who are not only rob some armored trucks, but they also like deal in like porn and human trafficking, and like they're in their Jason Statham breaks into their studio basically, and you see that they're filming porn, and then there's these ladies there, and Jason Statham asks um, what their ages are, and then one of his guys says too young, and then Jason Statham's is like before he kills the people running the operation, they have like a pile of money there of like 2.5 million or something like that, I think is what it was. So before he kills all the guys running the operation, then he asks how old they are. The guy says not old enough, and then he says I think he tells the guys to clean up the mess or whatever, but he tells them to give the money to the women. So he's not like a bad guy, and you see that at another point in the movie. I wish I could remember exactly the context, because I thought it was a really interesting aspect, but I can't remember exactly what Jason Statham did. Oh, right, he is. There's a point, and this is earlier when he first starts kind of interrogating some people. He has his guys break into this guy's apartment and kidnap him and his, I'm assuming, wife, girlfriend, whoever, and starts interrogating him for information. Eventually, the guy, they get the guy to talk by showing the guy that they have his wife or whatever, and the guy ends up talking, and then Jason Statham says, uh, I think he says he tells one of his like lieutenant guys to like give them a certain amount of money and like a ticket or something to leave town or something like that. So like Jason Statham isn't necessarily a bad guy. He's just trying to, you know, get revenge for his son. So, he's going about it kind of the wrong way, but like still kind of like a nice guy. Um this was just a really, really fun movie. And this movie, everything I described in this movie, just imagine it all with kind of that Guy Ritchie swag, that kind of cool factor to it. And this movie is just so much fun. Like I said, the only real problems I have with this movie are, some of the dialogue can be a little cringe, and the overall story, robbing the armored cars, and then the guys turning on each other because they don't want to split the money. That sort of stuff is kind of, you know, pretty cliche. But I think this is based on a book or something like that. I think Guy Ritchie and one or two other people, I think, are credited with the screenplay. So it's based on something else. So it's not like it's entirely written by Guy Ritchie or anything like that. So it's not necessarily like his fault or anything, especially if he's going off some sort of source material. But this is a really fun movie. I really enjoy it. Another really, really solid like Guy Ritchie movie. I don't know what I would rate it. I don't like rating movies. I'm not good at rating movies. And I'm not super like picky either. I just know what I like, what I don't like, and I can only express, you know, those opinions. But really good movie. I really enjoyed it. I would say I could understand why some people would have more issues with this movie than I do, but I don't think there's really anybody out there that would say this movie is bad. I think this movie, for like, if I'm being realistic and logical, for me, I think the movie is really good, but really, if I'm thinking about the movie objectively, this movie could range anywhere from, like average to really good. Not quite fantastic, but from like average to really good, somewhere in between those 2 points, I think is where this movie lies. It's just really fun. Guy Ritchie is a unique guy in terms of vision and directing, and I just like what he does. His movies have so much character. They just have that cool factor, and I just really enjoyed this movie. But thank you so much for listening into this podcast. I'm definitely going to try and get more episodes out. Like I said, they're going to be a little bit quicker. I may add more than one thing to the podcast. I don't know. We'll see how that goes. I just need to get in the groove of recording the podcast again, because I was trying to do some work on the other channel and just kind of get everything going. It's been a process trying to get back in the groove of things, but thank you all so much for listening. Hope you all enjoyed this podcast. Next podcast, I will probably finally talk about Godzilla vs. Kong, and I may do it in combination with Mortal Kombat. I don't have that on my... Oh, I do have it on my list. Okay. It's just higher up on the list than I thought, because I've been watching a lot of stuff, but I think I may combine Godzilla vs. Kong and the Mortal Kombat movie into one podcast. Godzilla vs. Kong, I have a little bit to say, or a little bit to talk about. Mortal Kombat, I don't have too much to talk about, because I'm not very familiar with the Mortal Kombat games. I'm very loosely familiar with the games, and then I've seen all the Mortal Kombat movies, but that's about it. But thank you all so much for tuning in. I hope you all enjoyed. I will see you guys next time. We're going to be talking about some Godzilla vs. Kong, maybe some Mortal Kombat. I'll see you guys next time.